Hello, Spectrum Women. It is I, Becca Lory Hector, your host of Asking Spectrum Women. Welcome back to another edition of Asking Spectrum Women. It is March. Happy March, right? I can't believe that we're already in March. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. I feel like I just started making these, but then I looked back and I was like, wow, I've been doing this for almost 6 months already. That's crazy. Crazy. And I'm all full of weird faces today. I noticed that I just recorded Neurodiversity Newsstand, which is the other thing I do on YouTube. And I was making faces the whole time there too. I'm feeling a little silly today. The weather has been amazing outside. And so I've been sitting out most of the day. And actually, the last couple of days, it's been like that. And so I have just been enjoying it. I've just been enjoying the weather. And I think finally today, like we've got another couple of days in it, so it's not a fluke. And I think today I finally like smelt spring, which sounds strange, I know. But I can also smell snow and weird things. I guess that's my sensory profile. But it's finally smelled like spring to me today. And that was very exciting. And I'm happy to be inside and recording this for you guys, but I cannot wait to be done so that I can go back outside. Thank goodness I have dogs to use as an excuse to get me out there, I guess. But oh, am I so glad to have sunshine back, you guys. Oh, it's so nice. Woo, so nice. Okay. Anywho, we are on to March, and we've got some interesting questions this month. I'm hoping that the answers help all of you, or some of you, or most of you, I don't know. But usually when I answer your questions, I'm hoping that all of the advice helps the person whose question it was, but also that it's general enough that everybody else can glean something from it. So that's sort of my hope when I'm doing these Asking Spectrum Women videos. So let's get on with the questions, shall we? Here we go. Some of them are short questions with short answers and the other way around. I'm going to try and do 4 this week, this month rather, and we'll see what happens. Okay. First question. Okay, so the first question is about the coronavirus, and it's not something that I particularly want to talk about, and of course I have my personal opinions on it, but the question is that it creates anxiety, seeing it all in the news and everything. And how do you manage your anxiety, and how do you deal with the anxiety surrounding something like the coronavirus? So I want to talk about that a little. It's not the first time that something like this has kind of been around, where there's been a virus and we don't know where it's coming from, and everyone's freaking out. It's a new virus, and so what? And it's not always about viruses either. There's something about when bad things happen in the news, that then everyone wants to talk about it. It's almost like a bad thing is a good thing because it gives them news. And so what happens is we just are bombarded with it, right? So there's not any place you can go to kind of get away or get a break from the information. And I think that is part of what increases our anxiety. So some of my advice surrounding it is a little bit of that, and some of it is about educating yourself. So if the coronavirus situation is making you nervous and making you anxious and you want a way to handle it, one of the first things that I would say is to educate yourself about it. So don't just go on Fox News or any old news source. Make sure you're reading information from like the CDC, right? You want to be reading real information, and you want to educate yourself on the facts. What are the actual facts? Because then you can know when you're reading an article or you're seeing a news story that they're exaggerating, right? Because you have read the facts, and the facts will save you from all of that chaos. The other thing is that with something like the coronavirus and the anxiety is to start to make a conscious effort to limit your social media time, or limit, and not even just social media, I guess your media time, period. So like television, all of it, where you might be bombarded with that information. And even sometimes socializing can bombard you with that information because people want to talk about it, right? It's the thing to talk about. If the weather's not bad, then we'll talk about the coronavirus. And so you want to kind of limit your exposure to the topic. That will help, right? If you control the amount of talking about it that you're doing, it will help control some of that paranoia and anxiety that comes along with the unknown, right? Because it is scary and it is unknown. And you're certainly not the only person feeling anxious about it. And so my third bit of that whole slew of advice is to try and have a sense of humor about it. Try to find the funny in it. It's a big scary thing and it's a very serious topic, but there are also some funny memes out there that are making fun of it, and it's kind of clever. And we have to learn that when everything gets really, really serious, if we lose the ability to laugh at ourselves, we will never survive. So those are my kind of 3 tiers of recommendations for handling the paranoia and anxiety around the coronavirus. So educate yourself with the facts, arm yourself with facts. Go ahead and limit your time on media and exposure to the topic, right? And then remember to laugh about it sometimes. Try and see the lighter side of it so that you don't just get dragged down with the seriousness. It'll bog you down, and in that sadness and scariness, you will find the anxiety lives, right? It will breed in there. And so you want to kind of give a break to that. And so that's my advice on how to handle your anxiety surrounding that topic. But I did want to talk about it because it is timely and it is time sensitive, and it it's something that we should talk about. Here's another one of those time sensitive things that's happening that we don't have control over again, and that is the clocks being turned forward. And so they get turned forward here in the U.S. I guess in North America they get turned forward, and yes, time change is getting harder, and for many of us, the older we get, right, the harder this time change is. It's so annoying to reschedule our bodies, to reorganize ourselves and everything around the new hours of sunshine that happen. I find that the spring, when we gain an hour, is less disturbing to me than when we lose an hour. That cuts into my sleep time, and I definitely am somebody that needs that full amount of sleep. And so I don't know if other people find the spring less bothersome than the fall, but the spring forward bothers them less than the fall back of an hour. But that's how I feel. So I know that spring will be a little easier on me, the time change, than that. But the other thing is that you can kind of do some prep work for it, which if it's something that it really disturbs your well-being and your cycle and all of your kind of flow and routine, it'd be worth doing some prep work. And I would say go ahead and start to add that hour to your life sooner. Like, don't wait until you have to add the full hour on Saturday at midnight, whatever it is. Rather than do that, the Monday before that, change, try to regulate it by, 15 minutes. So that's not to say reset your clocks, but say you go to bed at a certain time, or you wake up at a certain time, or you eat lunch at a certain time. You want to start to shift that time towards that other hour in pieces and in parts, kind of from the beginning of the week closer to the end of it. And the other thing is to plan for after the time change to be a little kind to yourself. So don't make yourself crazy with scheduling. Don't book a lot of things into those few days afterwards or that week afterwards. Just do limited stuff so that your body and your brain can adjust to that time difference. There's nothing worse than rushing into it, you changing that hour, and then rush and changing your schedule the same way and trying to do everything all at once. That will definitely make it harder. And so that's kind of my advice on time change. And so those were both really timely questions and practical questions, like tangible. We have to deal with this, all of us. So those are my pieces of advice for that stuff. Moving on to the next pieces, the next 2 questions are a little deeper, they're a little heavier, so I'll kind of lump them together and to do them together. So the first one is about boundary setting, which I love. So, oh, come on, phone, don't be weird. Okay, how to say no and set strong boundaries. Right, so that's the basic question. How can I say no and set boundaries? Well, the first thing you need to do in any of this is realize that all of that boundary setting that you do is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable for you because it's going to feel new and feel different to you, and it's going to be uncomfortable to the people who you're setting boundaries for, because that's the first time they're going to be feeling any feedback or pushback from you about things that they've probably gotten away with in the past. And so it's going to be uncomfortable. So as I say often in my practice, and I say often when I talk, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Just get used to it. You're going to be uncomfortable. Oh well, ride through it. You'll get through it, and on the other side, you will be comfortable. But it takes practice, and it takes walking through being uncomfortable first. So when I tell people to set boundaries, I want you to do a couple of things. When you're setting boundaries, you want to be really clear, right? And you want to be clear, not to the people who you're giving the boundaries to, but clear in your head about what the boundary is, who crosses it, and when it's okay for someone to cross it, if ever, and when it's not. And then you have to kind of make it unpersonal. So, you can't let your mom get away with it if you're not going to let your boss get away with it, right? You want to have it be kind of universal to the people in your life when you set a boundary. So I always say to myself, one of my boundaries is somebody who will listen to what it is that I have to say with half an ear, and then tell me what to do after it. So I really hate it when someone is not a good listener but thinks that I should take their advice. So that's sort of like a pet peeve, but it's also a boundary for me. So if you're not listening really to what it is that I have to say, but you feel like you can tell me what to do, you're not somebody I want very involved in my life, and I set that boundary. There are lots of different ways to set up boundaries about different things, but the crux of it all is that you have to be committed. You have to be committed to setting your boundaries. You can't set a boundary halfway. You can't let it work for a month and not work after that. You really have to commit yourself to the boundary that you're setting, because essentially what you're going to do is be training the people around you about what is acceptable behavior when interacting with you. That's all that you're doing. When you're setting a boundary, you're seriously just doing like human dog training. You're just basically setting, no, this is not okay, and you're consistent, right? No, no, no. And eventually people stop knocking on that door because they know it's a no, right? And that's the goal with boundaries, is that people eventually, they become so real and tangible. It's like a literal fence that people know they can't go past that. So for example, another one I use is with emails, right? I have boundaries about emails and replying back. I never reply back right away to an email. It usually takes me a little bit to process what is going on in the email and how I need to respond before I respond back. So that's one thing that I set a boundary about, because I used to feel pressured about responding quickly and responding back so quickly that I would often either commit to things that I really didn't want to commit to, or I would say no to things that I probably would have said yes to if I had a little bit more time. So now I take that time. That's one boundary. I won't get pushed into responding quickly just because it's someone else's emergency. And then I think with emails too, I refuse to answer outside of my business hours, because unless it's an emergency, I need that time for me. So that's sort of my boundary. And so people who now email me all the time know that if they send me an email at night, they won't be getting an answer from me that night. And they stop expecting that they're going to get an answer from me that night. They know I'll check it first thing in the morning when I, go into my office hours and all of that, and they'll get an answer then. And eventually people start to learn that they shouldn't even bother to email you at night because they know they're not going to get an answer, and they wait until the next day. But that's an example of some boundary setting. The big crux of it all, and I promise you this is the piece, is your commitment to your boundaries, your commitment to holding them strong and to staying steadfast with them, and to kind of looking at it that way and really just staying committed and consistent, because it's just human dog training, really. Basically, I guess. I don't know, or at least that's how I see it, right? I guess it makes me think, there's one Big Bang episode that it makes me think of when I think about boundary setting. And I don't know if anybody else is going to remember this but me, but Sheldon does a whole thing with Penny, and she has a loud voice and she talks very loudly, and he wants to teach her to talk quieter. So every time she's too loud, he says quieter, and she lowers it, and then he gives her chocolate. And it's like really funny to me, because I feel like when I'm setting boundaries, that's what I'm doing. No emails at night. Thank you, chocolate. No emails at night. Thank you, chocolate, right? And eventually people get it. But I have to be the one that's committed and consistent with it. Because if I'm not, then nobody else will take them seriously. So that's my take on boundaries. Okay, and the next question is a nice long-ish one. But I like it because hopefully I'll be able to share some resources with you guys. Okay. So, um, the question is, I'm curious about how you go planning your week and looking ahead to plan. I remember you mentioned that executive functioning wasn't a huge issue for you. Can you share some tips on how you actually look ahead and sketch out time while incorporating spoon theory? Yes. Yes, I can. Because I had to do it for myself. And that's the thing. I had this question and there was no answer. So I did it for myself because I needed to figure out literally how many spoons do I have a day and how do I spend them and how should I spend them. Ooh, and when do I run out of them and that kind of thing. So I want to start with saying that everybody has a different amount of spoons. Okay, you have your different amount of spoons when you're at your best and when you're at your worst, and all of that is individual to each person. So I can't tell you how many spoons you have in a day, nor can I tell you how many spoons it takes you to do certain activities. That is on you. You have to do that experimenting, and you need to figure that out for yourself because that takes some trial and error and stuff. Doing stuff till you're past the point and saying, okay, what should I have taken off today? But that's part of the review process. So part of my planning was that observation time. So I spent time observing how many spoons I had, what felt like too much in a day, what felt like just enough, what felt like too little, and experimenting. So experiment a little bit with that, with how much spoons you have, and kind of get an idea of like the regular activities you do, like showering or making dinner or whatever, how many spoons they themselves usually use up for you. Because you're going to need those spoons every day. So you want to discount them from the things you're going to be layering on into your schedule. Early on in working, I figured out that I really couldn't do more than three kind of three big things in a day, right? That's what I say. Because it sounds like I should be able to do more, and on some days I am able to do more because some tasks are smaller and take less spoons, and so I can do a fourth or a fifth. But as a general rule, when I'm looking at my calendar and I need to schedule things, I try not to schedule more than three things in a day that need to be scheduled, right? So I don't. That's not to say that I don't do other things like shower and eat dinner, but I won't schedule things that aren't part of my must-do life beyond three things in a day. Traveling to, getting on time, and being places, being mentally prepared, having the energy, any travel that I have to do, any clothing that I might have to wear, all of that eats away at my spoons. And if I try and do that for more than three events during the day, I crash. So that was a lot of trial and error. So now literally when I look at my calendar, if somebody wants to schedule something, I look and I see I have two things. Well, I can fit in one more thing. Or I can say, well, I already have two things that day. Let me keep it light and I'll move it to something else. The other thing that I do is schedule days where I don't do anything, right? So I try to keep, for example, my Mondays and my Fridays super light. And part of the reason that I have chosen those days has to do with work itself, right? For the most part, on Mondays, people get into their office on a Monday and they're looking to organize their week and they're checking their emails and all of this stuff. And so nobody's really going to have a chance or time to answer back on any project that I might have sent them over the weekend or we might be working on or whatever. Chances are I'm not going to hear from most people until Tuesday. And then on Friday, almost everybody is so ready to be done with the week. They're just looking to close out their stuff and then leave behind what can be left behind for next week and all of that stuff. So nobody else is really looking to start anything new on a Friday. So I found that those 2 days were okay for me to not be doing any office stuff. If I didn't do any office stuff on those days, fine by me, because I knew I wasn't really missing on any emails coming in. It wasn't going to be a busy day like that. So that's something that you can definitely do for yourself is take a look at your days, right? How many days a week are you pushing yourself to your max? Are you taking days where you're not scheduling anything, where you can, where you don't have to be anywhere, right? Or have to do anything. Everybody deserves at least one day in which they are at total rest. And if you don't have that, you're going to feel that in your spoons. So in terms of looking at my week for executive planning, I think about those things first when I'm putting together my week. I'm trying to create a nice kind of even playing field. So what I want is to create a nice, good, even base. And I want most of my weeks and most of my days to look like that. Because if I can do that most of the time, it'll be sustainable. If I'm doing anything other than trying to keep it balanced, where I might say I have 2 really, really, really busy days and then 3 days doing nothing, that up and down thing is also extremely hard for my brain. Shifting energy is from being really focused and really with it and really doing the thing that I'm doing, and then days where I don't have to do anything. It's hard for me to balance that. So I try not to do that too much. And let's see, what other executive functioning pieces? So some, like I said, some of it has to do with that. And then in terms of executive functioning tools, my 2 favorite tools in terms of planning and time planning and all of that are definitely my calendar. And I do, if you have Google Keep. Google Keep is like a notepad situation basically, and you can make different colors and everything. So why I like these 2 tools is because both of them are easy to access on my phone. They are both in one place. I can delete and change and exchange and move things around when they change, no problem. And the other great thing about both of the products is that they are easily color coded. So you can color code events in your calendars, and you can color code things, notes in your things. So I do a lot of that too. I have notes of things I want to write about, and if I have ideas for stories, I make a little note of it. I have a list of kind of projects I want to get through for the year, and they're in there. And then I have, little notes, little things all over the place, right? In a notepad, and then you get to kind of do them like a to-do list. It feels great when you've completed one and you get to delete it. But I've color coded those notes so that I know which ones are for work, which ones are personal, right? And that is also another recognition. Like when I'm looking for my grocery list, I know it's yellow, and I know that's the note I'm looking for is the yellow note. And I find that very helpful. And I do very similar in my calendar, right? When I schedule something that's for me, like a haircut or a doctor's appointment or something, or dinner out with friends, if I ever did anything like that, I color code that green for myself. Whenever I do things for work, that's color coded turquoise. Whenever I have things to do for Antonio's job, that's color coded blue, right? And so I know kind of when I can look at my calendar and briefly see, just based on those colors, what my week looks like, what my day looks like. And so those are my 2 favorite tools. There are so many out there, and so many of them are free. And so what I suggest that you do is really start observing. Observe how you use your spoons. Observe what uses the most spoons, what uses the least. Observe what gives you joy and what doesn't, because you have to include those too in what it is that you're doing. And then try and find some organizational tools that work for you. I think as autistics, we do really well when we have sound notifications and when we use a visual planner type thing, which is exactly what I use my calendar for and the notes for. And of course, you can set alarms to any of those things, which I do. And so I say, look, we've been gifted technology of our cell phones, and everybody has made an app for that. So you might as well use it. It's out there. If you'd like some more resources, if I didn't fully answer your question, please feel free to email me. I'll try to think of some more and get them to you. I can definitely recommend a couple of books if you'd be interested. But it is a problem. Those of us on the spectrum who have executive functioning difficulties definitely need help decoding them, because it involves every part of your day and all along your day and every day of your life. And if you can manage them, if you can kind of take on the challenge and decode the challenge and figure out how to work it for you, you will have mastered executive functioning for you. And that's all you need to do, is figure out how to do it for you. So I hope that helps. I hope these answers to these questions were helpful to you guys. Thank you once again to Spectrum Women Magazine for having me. Thank you to you guys for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the March installment of Asking Spectrum Women right here with Becca Lory Hector. I will see you guys next month in April. April Asking Spectrum Women. If you have questions for April and you want to get them to me, you can email them to me at info@beccalory.com, or you can comment wherever you've seen these videos and leave your questions. I hold on to them until April, and then we decide which ones make the cut. So that was the March installment. I hope you have a very good rest of your month. I hope you take care of yourselves. I hope you find joy, and I will see you guys in April. It's been a pleasure, ladies.